Barney asks a question. He says this: in mid-September, after your video on the 5-exercise kettlebell workout, I went out and bought 35-pound and 50-pound kettlebells. In just under 2 months during the program, 2 or 3 times a week, which is great, I've dropped a few pounds, but more importantly, feel really good. Barney, you bring joy to my heart, because that's what I want to hear. I want you to look good, feel good, move good, and practice English. I was initially concerned that swings would be problematic for my low back, but that's not been the case. However, I can't say the same thing for the squats. Any suggestions for getting my hips to open up and increase the range of motion, ROM, in my ankles? It's at the bottom of the squat where I feel my low back around my SI joint tightening up. I'm taking a week off to see if it will improve. I haven't done any damage, but I can feel it in a not so good way. Now, here, let's just say this real quick. First off, hats off, Barney, because I'm very pleased that you followed the program and you started to move on. Now, this issue with your back, I have so many different programs I offer, but one of the things I talk about each and every day, and we have a video somewhere on this, is I call it my daily mobility warm-up. I just jump up and I hang, and all I do is hang. I love it when I say something as simple, I hang, and then like people ask me all these follow-up questions. I jump up on a bar and I hang. Well, are your shoulders retracted? No, I don't know. I'm hanging. What do you do with your, what are you doing with your leg biceps? I don't know. So hang for 30 seconds, and then I sit at the bottom of a goblet squat for 30 seconds. And while I'm down there, I make little circles. I push my knees out with my elbows. I make circles both directions. I wedge in. Sometimes I curl. And all I'm trying to do is lubricate that the hips, the ankles, the knees, and the lower back. I'm going to need you a little bit of a favor. What I would like you to do for me, Barney, is send in a YouTube video to us, and make it private if you want, whatever you want to do, and I'll look at it and I'll comment on it later. Increasing the range of motion for squats, the first barrier to run into is your DNA. You just might be born not to squat. And some people are born to sprint, some people are born to squat, some people are born to play in the National Basketball Association, and some of us just aren't. So I'm worried that maybe your DNA doesn't support deep squatting. Having said that, I have a drill called the goblet squat into the overhead squat drill. And every time I get someone to take that exercise seriously, this magical thing happens where all of a sudden they become very lubricated in their hips and their lower back, and all of a sudden they're good squatters. Barney, since you've only been doing this since September, I don't know if you could have had a lot of changes at the flexibility and mobility range. We know that very quickly your nervous system adapts to weightlifting. We know very quickly that your, kind of depends on your, but once those hormones kick in, your muscle mass changes. And as I've heard, that even the very nature of the muscles changes, in some cases more to fast twitch, which I guess is good. In your case, you might not have given it enough time, enough practice sessions to increase your range of motion while being supported by your structure. Couple things I wish I knew: your age and your background. But let's send that video in and let's talk about this more. Okay, pretty simple question from Dan. What are your thoughts on knee sleeves for squatting? Well, back in '91, I wore knee sleeves, ankle brace, elbow brace, wrist brace, a belt. I was just constantly rubbing those heat creams on my body. I was icing up everything after I was done working out because I was brutally overtraining, completely overtraining. So if you're a competitive squatter, I think you need to wear those knee, whatever you can get away with your federation, because it will help your squat number go up. Let me finish this whole question here. I have used them years ago when I was squatting much heavier than I am now, but always kind of looked at them as the wrist straps of squatting, meaning that they were most like just masking imbalances elsewhere, including overtraining, so I quickly got away from them. After a few recent squat workouts that made the knees bark a little bit, no real pain, just aggravation, I started to entertain the thoughts of throwing them on again, but I have a fear that I might become reliant on them. What are your thoughts? So my thoughts are this. Dan, I respect the fact that you squat. I am concerned that unless you're competing, banging up your knees, it isn't probably a great idea. Or even if you are competing, it's probably not a good idea. So what I would be interested in is you give yourself maybe a couple week assignment. You can either do this with suspension trainers, or you can just do it with a doorknob. In fact, we call it the doorknob drill, even when I use the suspension trainer. But you lay your weight back and you squat. Do a couple sets of 10, 3 sets of 10 the first week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then assess, does that hurt my knee? If that doesn't hurt your knee, then okay. Now, if it does hurt your knee, maybe we got to look at another exercise for you to deal with, because maybe you shouldn't squat. Then the next week, go to the goblet squat. Again, 3 to 5 sets of 10. Don't work real hard, and see how that feels. The third week, do that goblet squat to overhead squat drill that I show, where you drop down the goblet squat, you pick up the stick, stand up, squat back down, put the stick down, curl the bell back up, stand up, squat, and just keep going. After the end of those 3 weeks, then I want you to go back and do what you were doing before. And because if it's a technical issue, then that's something we can fix. If you're doing certain variations of back squatting, for example, which some of them I don't like, very often people's knees hurt because the variation of the back squat they're doing just is beating them up. And again, if you're not competing, who cares if you squat 200 pounds in a workout versus 800 pounds, as long as you feel good and move good. So at the end of those 3 weeks, if your knees aren't barking or it's real manageable, then maybe it's just the variation you used. After those 3 weeks, if your squats don't hurt, but you still want to squat, I would even suggest that you go to the knee sleeves. But go into the knee sleeves a little bit slowly and with some insight and thought to it, okay? Go into adding them back with at least a little self-experimentation first, because if it is a technical issue, the knee sleeves are just going to be they're prophylactic. They're stopping something. But what I'd like you to do is make sure your technique is rock solid. I'm sorry, and then see if you need it or not. Okay, that's a good question, and I hope it works out for you.